I need to see what problem we're trying to solve and what that equates to and why it's a 100% increase in the utility tax. That's the challenge where I'm at today. But this is helping me. But I need to see that for me to be in support of that. So I can explain to constituents why your utility tax is being proposed at a 100% increase.
It's, I see what you're saying with the 100% increase, and it depends on how you want to slice and dice the numbers. It's going from 6%. The proposal is going from a 6% utility tax increase to a 12% utility tax increase.
So 100%.
So I get what you're saying
100%.
with the 100%. You could also say it's a 6% increase, because that's really what it is.
Right.
But I
get
point
you.
taken.
Any increase, I need to be able to explain to my neighbors why their rates are going up and what that equates to. What are they getting?
All right, now we are moving into the public hearing portion. The first one is on ordinance number O-2024-007. It's the 2025 to 2026 proposed budget. And our finance director, Troy Niemeyer, is going to do a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I am Troy Niemeyer, Finance Director, and we have a short presentation before we open the public hearing for the 2025-2026 budget. So we'll start with our journey thus far. As always, a budget starts with a council retreat, and we held that January through March of this year. And that's where the council gets together to review priorities and goals, make plans for the next biennium. And then the finance, finance department gets to work doing forecasts and projections. Staff in various departments start doing budgeting and planning work. We used, as you know, a different approach this year, a first team approach, where all of the directors got to see what every other department was asking for. We always make sure that budget requests tie to budget and council goals and priorities. Later in the spring and early summer, we had 4 Municipal Finance 201 presentations. We did, as we worked through it, and we'll go into this a little more later, we did additional planning and some reductions to the original budget amounts. Finally came out with the mayor's proposed budget a few weeks ago. And before we're done, we will have done 3 budget workshops and 2 public hearings before adopting the final budget. Some of the challenges as we moved into this budget, we've had years of growth and increasing population, which increases demands for public service. We've also had high inflation the last couple of years, which we all know about, and we've all felt the pinch of that inflation. For the city, that hits us everywhere from staff costs to the cost of repaving a road or building a roundabout. Revenue growth, of course, we talk about this a lot, and we'll talk about it more tonight. We have the 1% property tax limit, which does not allow us to keep up when we have periods of high inflation. And then on the staff side, we've had some turnover and burnout, especially with non-represented staff, salaries, and in some cases, not enough staff. So moving to the property tax, the blue line on the bottom represents the 1% annual property tax increase that the city is allowed to do. Previous in the early 2000s, as you'll remember, there was a citizen initiative to limit property tax to 1% growth each year. If that had not taken effect, cities used to be able to increase property tax annually by as much as 6%. Not to say it was 6% every year, but it was usually tied to inflation. And so that's the gray line on the top. So that shows where the city could have been on just inflationary increases. The yellow line on this graph shows what the city actually collected, and that's thanks to the new construction. That's thanks to the growth we've had in the city, and that's been a lifeline, because as you can see, it's much more than just the 1%. However, even with that, it doesn't allow us to keep up when inflation hits 6, 7, 8, 9%. So some of the priorities going into the budget were to increase non-represented salaries to a more competitive level, ask for additional staffing, look at additional space and security at City Hall, and deferred building maintenance. We'll go into each of these a little bit. For the non-represented wages, we found that our wages were not competitive, which resulted in high turnover, unfilled positions, and fewer applicants for open positions. There are several instances, especially with engineering and community development, where we would make an offer to the best candidate, often at the top of the salary range, and they would reject the offer because they got a better offer at another city or a county. So that's something we definitely want to fix. I'm going to forward to the next slide and I'll come back. This is a graph that you've seen before, Council. This is just a very simple cost of living increase between the different work groups at the city. This does not include special pays, overtime, assignment pays, and that kind of thing, just straight COLAs. So the top line is the police guild in the gray there. Below that is police. Oh, oops. I did that wrong. So I'm sorry. Top line is fire. Next line down is police. The yellow line is the Teamsters, and the bottom blue line is the non-rep salary folks. And so this is part of what we're looking to address to make us more competitive. Okay, back to this one on the right-hand side. One of the other priorities was additional staff. We've had a lot of growth in the residents of Tumwater, but we haven't had a lot of growth at the city staffing-wise. More people means more demand for services, and in some cases, like new building code standards coming up for community development, some unfunded mandates. Continuing with the priorities, we've got a lot of deferred maintenance. The buildings shown here on the left are just a few examples of city-owned buildings that we've had for a long time that need new siding or a new roof or new upgrades on the interior of the building that haven't been done for a long time. And then on the right-hand side, with the growth of the city and anticipated growth for staff and continued growth, we need more room somewhere. City Hall would be preferable, but we're kind of busting at the seams right now. So, for example, in the next biennium, as we implement body-worn cameras, we don't have room for staff as it sits right now, so we need to create some. And then a couple years ago, we had a Homeland Security audit really related to the water system, but they also went through City Hall and made recommendations for security enhancements at City Hall as well. So this slide, if you were at the budget workshop 2 weeks ago, we have this, and if you direct your attention to the bottom, at that time, the expenditures outweighed revenues to the tune of $10.2 million. We told you at that time we would continue to work on this, and we have. So you'll see on the right, on the bottom, in that 2 weeks, we've brought that down to $6.8 million. That would mean using reserves to balance the budget. We are in a good position with reserves, but we'd still like to get it a little bit lower than that. We're hoping closer to $5 million, so we are going to continue to work, and we will see you in just over a week at the next budget workshop. This is to demonstrate the overall need we identified through the budget process. When we identified all the needs of the city, put them all together, it came out to about $30 million more in needs than we had in revenue. That was an unacceptable budget to bring forth, so we went back to the drawing board, narrowed that down, and we got it down to $20 million. That was still an unacceptable level for the budget, so we went back to work again, got it down to $10.2 million, which was what came out in the mayor's proposed budget, and as I mentioned tonight, we're down to $6.8 million at the moment. Some of the big items in the budget that might be of interest to you, we have the body-worn cameras for the police department. Across the top, that shows the new positions that it'll take to implement those, and then on the bottom portion, the cost of the new people for 2025 and 2026, and then on the far right for the entire biennium, the increased wages to the guild members for wearing the cameras, and then the hardware cost for a grand total of a little over $1.1 million. The new Medic One unit, this is a program where Medic One looked at all the fire stations in the county. They have a need due to the growth in population to add another medic unit. They ran a lot of scenarios and data and decided that Station T2 here in Tumwater would be the ideal place for that medic unit. So this is in process. Across the next biennium, the total expenditure cost of that is $2.5 million, with revenue reimbursements from Medic One at about $2 million. So the net increase cost of the city's general fund is about $512,000. Moving on to general fund revenue. This slide is interesting to me because, and hopefully to everybody, sales tax and property tax for some time now have been the two largest revenues. That's the blue and the gray, if that's hard to read. For a long time, those have been the two largest sources of revenue for the city's general fund. This time, in this next 2-year budget, for the first time, sales tax is going to be larger than property tax. And that is what we're seeing there is the long-term effect of the 1% property tax cap. And so the property tax just can't grow as fast as sales tax or other sources can. And so sales tax will now be our largest source of revenue, which is great. We will take all the sales tax we can get. Please spend money in Tumwater. It is more volatile. If there's ups and downs in the economy, it fluctuates more, whereas property tax is very level. That's why it's nice to have a nice property tax base. Sure.
Oh, hold on one moment, Councilmember Jefferson. Okay, go ahead.
So sales tax is everyone. Property tax is just for those who own property. Is it up to the state to raise the sales tax, or can Tumwater raise the sales tax?
We have some limited ability to raise sales tax.
Mhm.
We don't have unlimited ability, but that is one of the tools that's available to us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then to close this graph out, we have the B&O tax in the yellow and intergovernmental contracts and grants in the large blue one there. Moving to expenditures, salaries and benefits are by far the largest expenditure portion of the budget. That's our people, followed by other charges and services. And then by department, police and fire are nearly 50% of the budget, about, I think it was 47.4% in the yellow and the pink there, followed by parks at 12.9% and transportation and engineering at 10.4%. And this is the graph we refer to as the fiscal cliff. It is not an actual cliff, it's more of a performance measure. So we'll go through that here for a second. The revenue and expenditure forecasts, some history and some forecasts are on the top. The red line are the expenditures, blue line is the revenue. And in part due to that property tax limit, that just creates a structural deficit where over time, revenues can't keep up with expenditures. The gray line at the bottom and the yellow line, the gray line is the ending fund balance, and the yellow line is the minimum required fund balance. So the minimum number of reserves, minimum number for the reserves that we need. Where those lines intersect in 2028 is what we refer to as the cliff. So our job at the city is to monitor that very closely and make smart investments in our future so that we can continue to kick that intersecting line out further into the future. When we did this, the current budget 2 years ago, in 2022, that intersection was in 2026. So we have successfully moved that out an additional 2 years, and we will continue to work on that. Okay, in the budget, the business type funds are our utilities, water, sewer, storm, and the golf course. Capital project funds, we've got the governmental CFP and transportation CFP. And then the overall budget summary, this is not all of our funds if you add those up, but these are some of the larger, more significant funds. And then the total expenditure budget for this budget so far is $428 million. That does include ending reserves, so it's not all expenditures. And our next steps. Tonight, we will have the first public hearing in the budget process. On November 12th, we will have another budget workshop. Everyone is welcome to join us for that. On November 19th, we'll have another public hearing for the budget. Adoption is allowed at that meeting, or we can adopt on December 3rd. And so for that, Madam Mayor, I will turn it over to you for the public hearing.
All right. Is there any questions before I open up for the public comment? Councilmember Swarthout?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that at one point we were $10.2 million over, and now we have it down to 6.8, taking 3.4 million out. So how does that, where would we see that reflected? Because I'm looking at the original paper document and then also the one from our website. Will that be updated to show where deductions have been taken, or how is that reflected?
Yes, when we'll go into more detail on that at the next budget workshop, as far as what's the kind of things we're pulling back. And then after we adopt a budget, we will put all of that detail together in written form as well.
Okay. Councilmember Dahlhoff?
Thank you, Mayor. Troy, so here's my question is, maybe it's for Karen, our city attorney. How can we have a public hearing on the budget when we have not been presented a budget?
We have been presented a budget. It's on the website. It's been in
The 63-page document is the budget?
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification. The question I have is, when I see 100% increase in a utility tax, my first thing is, what problems are we trying to solve? So I'm used to seeing a budget where it has each department and everything penciling out, right? So there's increases. So are these increases because of inflation, because of projects, staffing? I'm not able to see any of that. So what was given to us, that 63-page document, is not sufficient for me to understand the budget, because I need to see a budget. So that's what am I missing? I guess that's my question.
1 second.
Thank you. So our intent is to bring you back additional information at the budget workshop next week, and then to provide similar information to what you've had before prior to the final public hearing. The documents that we are actually officially adopting are the first, I think it's the 3 or 4 pages of the document that you got a couple weeks ago. And then the detail after that is the information that talks about expenses by fund and by department.
So I guess for me, I need more time. I'm used to the budget coming out in July, August, and spending multiple hours talking about the programs and the priorities and where everything is as a council. So for me, getting it at the next meeting is not enough time for me to review, because my background chemistry. I need to see the numbers to understand what the problem is and what problems we're trying to solve. And what's been presented does not answer those questions for me.
So it's my understanding that we're generally following the same format that has been followed in previous years. We are a little bit later, I admit that. We have been working to transition from one ERP system to another, which has created some difficulties. It's created some efficiencies in terms of how we are able to track finances, but it's also created some challenges in terms of how we did our budgeting this year in terms of just the logistics of input. But in terms of the timeline, in terms of the steps in the process, it is similar to what we've utilized before. One of the changes that is of necessity, the way we've from last time, is you used to get a binder that had all the schedules in it.
That's what I need.
We have all those schedules and we can provide those to you. Those schedules reflect the $10.2 million deficit. So we haven't, the thought was, it takes a lot of work on the part of staff to compile and approve and compile and then print all of that information for you. So instead of doing that, as we were still trying to find ways to create savings and not have to dip into our ending fund balance as much, that we would wait to do that until we have been able to find all of those savings and then be able to give you more accurate information that doesn't end up giving you a 3-inch stack of papers 3 different
Right.
times.
The challenge I have is we have a public hearing and there's no budget for the public or me to review and follow up on and see and check and prioritize and support.
Yeah.
That's the challenge I have. We're in November. So I would ask that we don't vote on the budget in November because I need more time and there's nothing for the community to respond to. When I see the utility tax increase of 100%, I have not seen what the problem is, what we're trying to solve, and how that equates, that number, how that equates to 100% increase. That's what I'm missing.
So I think,
We're going to actually talk about that more tonight when we talk about the fee resolution. We did talk about that last week at the budget workshop. We talked about it, Public Works. We're going to bring it here again tonight.
Thank you.
Specifically the utility tax.
Right. What was explained in the last meeting was that it's a 100% increase. I need to see the numbers. I'm going to channel Angela right now of what it is now, what the need is, what problem we're trying to solve, and why that equates to a 100% increase in utility tax. Because I'm not seeing that and I'm not in support of that. So that's the challenge. I want to support the budget and move forward together, but I need to see what problem we're trying to solve and what that equates to and why it's a 100% increase in the utility tax. That's the challenge where I'm at today. But this is helping me. But I need to see that for me to be in support of that. So I can explain to constituents why your utility tax is being proposed at 100% increase.
I see what you're saying with the 100% increase, and it depends on how you want to slice and dice the numbers. It's going from 6%. The proposal is going from a 6% utility tax increase to a 12% utility tax increase.
So 100%.
So I get what you're saying
100%.
with the 100%. You could also say it's a 6% increase because that's really what it is.
Right.
But
I get
point
you.
taken.
Any increase, I need to be able to explain to my neighbors why their rates are going up and what that equates to. What are they getting?
Yeah.
I'm just channeling the regional fire authority, which still pains me. The messaging in the current state of why we were asking for what we were asking for. We could have done better, obviously, and we failed. So for this, that's why I want to avoid those unintended consequences of people going, what? Because if we have to do ballot measures, we need to be able to explain this and then the ballot measures that are coming up, right? So that's where I'm at. It's just help me understand better so then I can be better supportive of this budget.
Absolutely. And I will do my best to help all of us understand better during my next presentation.
Thank you, Trey.
Councilmember Jefferson?
Right, because we're just going to hear 100% increase. Oh my goodness, it's 100% increase. So how can we justify this increase? Where is the negative at and how are we going to, make that into a positive? Show us, right, on charts. This is what we had in the past. This is what we have coming in now. And yes, it's going to be painful, but we have no income coming in and sales tax is not enough. So that's where we have to go with that. Show us the data.
So we are going to have that in section 8 or
Okay.
number 8 this evening. That will be
Okay.
the topic. So that's kind of out. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like I have that's all typing.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? And we understand that this is a little different than what it is been in the past. And then, it's always finding that balance because I think in the past, everybody goes, oh my God, a 3-inch binder with all these papers and, how do you get through all that? And then it changes and then it changes and then it changes. And then which section are you looking at and which version? So, yeah, so, it's trying to streamline and to do this in the.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Let me just finish. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I get that and I appreciate the streamline and the efficiencies and effectiveness. The challenge that comes at a cost of looking like it's lacking transparency. That's the challenge, right? And so that messaging, I have not been able to answer questions that I'm receiving from constituents. And I have questions myself. So I appreciate the new process. And because it's November and we normally are talking about this in the summer, that's the challenge I have is I don't have enough time to really get into this and understand it so I can be able to answer questions.
so I would just encourage that we have a robust conversation with lots of questions asked at the next work session, We've had 2 work sessions and we've intended to, and we've provided the information. We set the stage, we provided some information. There is detail in here about the budget numbers.
I guess we differ. I expect more detail. I want the numbers and how it balances out and what's going into reserve. Like, I want the line items, not a summary that's 63 pages.
Okay.
So, 1 second, was Councilmember Swarthout, you're good? Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm not jumping over council members. So so we are having another budget work session on next week. So we can have more discussion because this isn't finalized.
Will we have those line items by then?
We can, so what you have in your book is actually reproduced from the new financial system that shows summaries of collapsed line items by department and by fund. And so I can check with staff and see if we can provide more detail. That will be a lot more detail. I'm happy to provide you with the 3-inch finder that has all of the schedules.
Yes, please.
That doesn't have the accurate approvals on it yet.
But it shows the priorities of where you're going. And that's what I need to see so that I could better understand.
All right, we have that. We can email that to you. We can upload it onto the website
Yes, please.
tomorrow.
Yes, please.
With the acknowledgement that it's not completely accurate and it's very draft
Right,
at
but
this point.
It's showing the direction that you want to go. And that's what I need to see because this does not help me understand what the problem is and what you're trying to solve.
Okay.
All right, 1 second, Councilmember Jefferson. Councilmember Gabi, did you have something that you wanted to say first? I want to give
Yes.
everyone some time. Hold on.
So Troy, I think it would be beneficial if you took, so everybody's saying 100%. When you 100% increase, it makes you feel a lot of money. So if you took an average ratepayer, what they currently pay and what the 100%, this is percent additional would look like, I think that would be more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that will be in the next presentation. It's
And
$8.08.
we will have that.
Oh, so it what now?
$8.08.
So when you say 100%, it makes it feel like it's like, I pay on the average $134 a month. So when you say 100%, I'm thinking, what, $260 a month? So if you break that down so that I'm hearing everybody's hearing that 100% doesn't look as frightening as it's meant to be.
Yeah.
But still, it's still $8.
And we will have that in the next presentation.
Yeah, we'll have that
breakdown for you.
presentation in 8. So we can have more discussion there. We want to get to the public hearing for this particular topic. So if we can hold the questions about utilities until that presentation, that would be helpful. So Councilmember Jefferson and Councilmember Von Holtz, did you have?
Just access to the working document. Mayor, I just wanted access to the working document somewhere that we can just dig in Saturday night at 8, 9 o'clock. That's
Yeah.
what we want.
Yeah.
I like the way you think.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Do you give people information that's incorrect in the beginning and then where, what is useful? So Councilmember Von Holtz.
My comment probably goes for the next presentation, but let's not discount that $8 is a lot to some people.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Any other discussion before I open the public comment portion of our public hearing? All right. So with that, I'm going to open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing on the ordinance number O-2024-007, the 2025-2026 proposed budget from the financial department. And so with that, please limit your comments to 3 minutes and please keep your testimony relevant to the subject of the public hearing. And I have the sign up. And is there anyone online who signed up? No one is there. So, all right. So with that, I will have you come to the podium. Pamela Hansen, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. I think I'll take the full 3 minutes intentionally this time. Pamela Hanson, Post Office Box 14521, Tumwater. I would like to first mention 3 words: deficit, efficiencies, overspending. Those are the 3 words that really pop out, summarizing the conversation. And the roundabout, all of the things that have happened in the past years, including the budget binder that I have. So I do have one of those 3-inch binders. I do understand just about every page of that binder. And so I'll take you back in time again. Mayor Ralph Osgood, Pete Kmet, and Mayor Pete Kmet and I, all 3 testified at the first comprehensive plan in Tumwater. We all went 3 different paths. Mayor Ralph Osgood and I reported to the same person. Our direct report was the comptroller of the Washington State Department of Revenue. Over and over and over again, Ralph Osgood went one way as the budget manager. I went the other way, scheduling meetings, data entry, learning everything, going to meetings with other department admins to manage the whole state of Washington Department of Revenue. Do I know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. So employee FTEs, there are people that have left, there's funding there. So there's the opportunity to double fill or bring in another, money can move there. It's just, where is it going to move? How much was left? Where is it going to go to? Every month, a budget report should be brought in from every department. It shouldn't be way behind. I don't know how behind is, but it shouldn't be. As a supervisor at the Department of Revenue Property Tax Division, I had to take care of my stuff. I had to report to the assistant director. It goes all the way up. At one point, a U.S. West communications executive was our director of the Department of Revenue. How intense is that? So this budget conversation and not having anything but a summary, which shows an extra $2 million being transferred into the golf course. So the golf course isn't making its own way. Taxpayers are still paying for that golf course, more than $500,000 a year, which was stated years ago, which it takes an effort to find that in that 3-inch budget document, but I can point to it in the one that I have. It went from here to here. So I'm wondering now where the loan from the transportation fund went to the brew house, and if that's paid off back to the transportation fund. I'm done.
Thank you. All right, Dave Nicandri.
Good to see you all again. Dave Nicandri, 505 4th Avenue Southwest. In days of yore, when I was on the council in the 1970s, we didn't do the budget until December. And I came tonight to speak at public comment because I thought I would be ahead of the curve, only to find out it's late in the game. But be that as it may, I'm here tonight to offer some budget feedback on the present straitened circumstances of the Historic Preservation Commission. Grateful, Mayor, to get another reappointment from you. I thought about it long and hard, but I decided I'd stick in there. But I need to report, I think I can say with confidence that as a group, we're quite restive. Because we have nothing to do, because we have no staff and no resources to work with. And that's perhaps bad enough in itself. What a community that bills itself as Tumwater's first community, or did at one point. We had indigenous testimony that this was the first settlement in this part of the state. Yet the city's Historic Preservation Board has nothing to work with. Mr. Denny repeatedly reminds us he has no staff, he has no time. So we either need to give him, through the force of the budget, or otherwise move it to some department that has the time and the resources, or give Mr. Denny the time and resources to work with. It's truly a lost opportunity because not only are things historic not getting done, you're not taking advantage of the talent on that commission. I can speak with some knowledgeability along these lines. You have the woman who's the head of a public broadcasting network. You have one of the most knowledgeable people in this state in terms of local history, who's equal the level of formal understanding of the community's history that the late Jim Brown had. You have a guy that used to be the head of the State Historical Society for a quarter of a century. And the only time we're called together is when, quite honestly, I think Chuck's kind of put up to it, but we're only called together when you want the Historic Commission to engage in some dirty work, like picking out wallpaper because some bum across the street from the brewmaster's house burns the place down, or you decide, more astonishingly still, you want the Historic Preservation Commission to delist one of the principal historic assets in the community. This is just madness. And so, well, we can disagree about what should be done with the brewmaster's house or what should be done with that tree. But for goodness sake, give us some resources to work with or just disband the outfit. Do one or the other. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to speak on the budget? All right, with that, I will close the public testimony portion of this and remind council that we have a budget workshop on next Tuesday and that we will get more information out to you before then. So with that, we're going to now move into our next public hearing, and that is on the ordinance number O-2024-006, ad valorem regular property tax for the fiscal year 2025. And again, we will have presentation from staff.
You can show it.
I'll go ahead and talk because I won't refer to the slide for a couple of sentences.
Can you move the microphone down a little bit? There you go.
Better?
Yes, much
Oh,
better.
yes, I can hear myself. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you tonight is the 2025 property tax levy ordinance for the city of Tumwater. The city's property tax levy is a very important source of revenue used to support the city's ongoing general government programs and public services. We have a requirement to respond to the Thurston County Assessor's Office by November 30th with an approved ordinance for the next year's levy request. Each year, the Thurston County Assessor's Office provides us with reassessed values on all existing properties, new construction amounts, and any annexations. We then use these values to estimate the city's annual property tax levy request. Cities are allowed by law to increase the levy each year, either by 1% or by the implicit price deflator or the IPD, whichever is less. This year, the IPD is higher at 2.57. So with the IPD being higher, Ordinance O-2024-006 establishes the City of Tumwater's property tax levy for fiscal year 2025 with an increase of 1% from the 2024 levy. The slide showing on the screen compares the 2024 levy to the proposed 2025 levy, and it demonstrates the 1% increase. The County Assessor's Office may still provide revised values up through November 30th, so the numbers may change slightly. But with the preliminary values, the most recent report shows an assessed value of $6.74 billion for the existing properties in Tumwater. The 1% increase over the 2024 levy is estimated at $11.78 million, which brings additional revenue of approximately $116,643. The most recent preliminary report also showed the 2024 new construction value estimated at 98.66, so not quite as high as it was in 2024. But this will bring an additional $183,300 of property tax revenue for 2025. There were no annexations in 24 or 25, so no additional revenue there. And the combined 2025 property tax levy, including the 1% increase, plus the additional taxes from new construction, estimates the city's indirect indirect tax rate per 1,000 of assessed value to be $1.80. Total revenue would be 12.1 million approximately. This ordinance is necessary to establish and certify the City of Tumwater's request for the 2025 property tax levy and indirect property tax rate as outlined. So tonight, we're presenting the property tax levy request as a public hearing and then asking to move the ordinance forward as a consent item for adoption at the November 19th council meeting.
All right, any questions before I open up public testimony? All right. So with that, I will get was there anyone online?
No.
All right. Pamela Hansen?
Thank you once again. Pamela Hansen, Post Office Box 14521, Tumwater. Okay, it would have been nice to have the slides in with this document, but I understand that there's already plenty of paperwork here. My question is, when I look at page 104 of the packet, it is the email from Shelley Carter, Assistant Finance Director to City Council. I'm looking at number 2, paragraph 3, which basically says what she stated on the slides, going from 186 to an estimated rate of $1.80 for 2025. So that's the last sentence of paragraph 3, item 2, background. Then paragraph 4, which was not mentioned at all in the presentation, the last sentence of paragraph 4 says, when the final assessed value is determined by the Thurston County Assessor and Washington State Department of Revenue, the Finance Director may recertify the tax amount to meet the $3.10 limitation if necessary. So this is also reflected in the actual ordinance under the whereas the City Council desires to limit the rate to $3.10 per $1,000 of assessed value plus administrative refunds, semicolon and. So my question is that going to happen after? Is it limited after the ordinance so that there's still that leeway to go from $1.86 to $3.10, because that's quite a jump. I'm just trying to make it more transparent because I have this in front of me and it wasn't on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I do not agree with that increase.
Great. Anyone else in the audience want to make public comment on this? That I'm closing the public comment portion of the public hearing. And I guess just for clarity, since the question came up, can staff, no? Because I think it's two different things. Is it not true?
That's some legal language in the statute that the county puts out there. I do not have the authority to raise it from $1.80 to $3.10.
I didn't think so. So,
No.
yeah. All right. So any council comment, any comments or discussion on this? So the request was to put this on consent. Is council wanting to put it on the consent calendar for action at our next council meeting? Do we need a motion for that? I don't think we. Okay, okay, yes. Sorry, I didn't have that part up. Sorry.
So I moved ordinance number 2024-006, an ordinance relating to tax revenue of the general fund, fixing the ad valorem of the regular property tax levy essential to pay expenditures of the city of Tumwater, Washington for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2025 to November 19th, 2024, consent agenda for adoption.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Swarthout, seconded by Councilmember Jefferson. Any discussion on the motion? With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. All right, so now we are moving to council considerations. And I think this is the one everyone's looking forward to. So this one is on resolution number R 2024-017, the 2025 fee schedule, and Finance Director Troy Niemeyer will be presenting. Go ahead, Troy.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so as Mayor Sullivan said, this is the
The
2025.
microphone, for some reason, is
Still not working?
yeah.
I'll get really close.
There we go.
Okay, so this is for the 2025 fee resolution, and we're also going to talk about the proposed utility tax increase during this presentation.
Okay, hold on one second. Councilmember.
Troy, just to clarify when it says fees, so this is fees and taxes we're voting on tonight. It's just the fees, not
Tonight-
taxes.
Correct. Tonight,
Thank
we're
you.
only voting on the fees.
Thank you so much.
So I wanted to, sneak preview of coming events. We discussed, along with the fee resolution, we did discuss the proposed utility tax increase at Public Works Committee, and then again at the last budget workshop. But we wanted to be sure because we knew there would be interest and comments on this, and so we wanted to bring this to the full council and run this by you. So they're related because it's a tax on the utility rates on the utility bill, but they are not married. So tonight you will only vote on the fee resolution, and if we decide to go forward with the utility tax increase, we will bring you a different ordinance to approve. So, thank you. Okay, so for the fee resolution, well, for this whole presentation, we're going to very briefly discuss some background. Going to go over some highlights to the changes in the fee schedule. We're going to talk about our utility assistance programs, the utility rates, utility taxes, the comparison with our neighbors, and the final recommendation. So by way of background, the fee resolution is an annual process. We evaluate the fees that the city charges on an annual basis. It affects every department within the city, and we generally prefer to have small incremental increases versus waiting 5-10 years and having really large utility rate or other fee increases. So jumping into some of the highlights, table 1, not too many big changes. Biggest one was an inspection fee for a new location from $85 to $110. Many of these fees are just kind of small increases to keep up with the cost of doing business. Table 2 is an interesting one for the impact fees. The Tumwater School District impact fee, which we collect on their behalf and then remit to them, is a 2.4% increase. But the Olympia School District, because of the way the boundaries work, we do usually collect some impact fees for Olympia School District. They have suspended their impact fees this year due to declining enrollment. Sorry, they have suspended them for 2025, not this year. In Table 3, Building and Fire Safety, just some small increases to reflect current rates, and a certificate of occupancy for a business is going from 85 to 110. Table 4 for transportation and engineering, again, increasing some fees to reflect current rates or cost of doing business. Connection charges for water going up 8.5%, for sewer is 4%, and that's planned out in the CFP. You might remember this next fee in Table 5. This is for a third false alarm for a fire system. The first false alarm and second false alarm are free. The third is going from $393. We just instituted that fee last year, and going to $401 for 2025. And that is the recommendation of the Washington State Association of Fire Chiefs. In Table 4 for recreation, we have youth baseball and basketball, each going up $10. And we have a new table this year. So you might remember from last year, we added information in the fee schedule to talk about our utility assistance programs. However, after having them there, we kind of figured out they don't really stand out. So Bonnie in Water Resources came up with a great idea as we were working on this to just make it its own table. And so we have a new table, Table 8, and that talks about the Lifeline program, which offers a 50% discount for low-income seniors and disabled folks who qualify. So that's a really great program. We also have the Tumwater Hardship Program, which is funded by community donations. And in addition to that, there still are state and federal programs that offer utility assistance. Stepping back to Table 7 for the utility rates, Lot is increasing fees by 3% on their portion of sewer, water, storm, and sewer 6%, 8%, and 7% respectively. And wanted to point out for anyone that might not know, Water Resources and Sustainability is the department that manages the utilities, and they have been working with a consultant named Corollo, who's working on a 10-year rate study for the water utility. That same work will be able to be applied to sewer and storm as well. And the fees that we're recommending in this fee schedule are actually lower than Corollo recommended, but because the work wasn't completely done, we decided we didn't want to go quite that high yet. Let's not get too far out in front of ourselves. And so this is what WRS landed on. These fees would be used, these fee increases will be used to support additional staff, additional equipment, continued electrification of our fleet, long-term capital projects, urban forestry, and the Deschutes Estuary project.
Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Troy, so for this slide, this is be an example where for me to understand better the 6, 7, 8% with that list. I appreciate that list, but what does that look like in terms of a dollar amount to then how did you come up with 6, 7, 8? Is it a 5-year plan with a capital facilities plan? Is it a 6-year plan? Then you take that number and divide it, and that's how you got 6 for every year. That's where I'm missing something of how did you come up with 6, 7, 8 based on those elements? What is that total value of those?
I would not be able to effectively answer that for you. Mr. Dan Smith could speak to that better if he were here.
He just came on camera.
Oh, there he is.
Thanks. Hi, Troy. Hi, Councilmember Dahlhoff. Yes, those.
Dan, we can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me better now?
Hold on, we're trying to work on it here.
Okay, let me know when it's good.
It's really, really quiet. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. We have IT staff coming.
Okay, excellent.
But Troy, that goes back to my comment of to help me better understand and feel confident answering what does cost of business mean? What does current rate mean? A value, what that value is, how you broke it down for this biennium. That's what I would like to see. So
Okay.
in the document on page 109 in the packet, it talks about justification is included in the packet. I haven't seen the justification. So I guess the question is, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And why does that equate this? So if we're increasing this by this much, what are our customers getting in return? That's the disconnect I'm having, is the background why. Why is it that? Why is it 8.5? Why is it 4? Like, that's what I'm missing.
Okay. Yeah, and if we can get Dan's voice, he'll. Oh, Craig.
Is it any better now?
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Go ahead.
Excellent. So I can answer that question kind of in two ways. One, when we do the long-term forecast, we're looking at kind of the model for the, as we're developing the CFP, and we're looking at operational aspects versus the capital aspects. We're trying to balance the long-term kind of view with the capital projects that we have, making sure that we can retain our reserves, our operational reserves as required by both city policy and best management practice for operational of the utilities, managing that through, where the rate increases and they look on that horizon. And so, really where this initial forecast is done, and it's been done for many years this way, we're looking at that long-term view. What does it take to make sure that we have enough operational capital plus the reserves in line for that horizon? And so that's where we determine that initial 6% increase as for the water utility in particular, but it also works for the other two utilities. As Troy noted, we're diving deeper into our water utility with the rate study with Carollo, and they're recommending a much bigger increase because of the significant capital projects that we have in place. But I, really, could not recommend that to you because one, that model is not done yet. We'll be bringing that hopefully forward with the next couple of months as we work through some of these details. So one, that's not done, and two, looking at the model that we've been kind of using to forecast rate increases for the last 10 or plus years, is using that simplified model as we develop through the capital project or the capital facilities plan update annually. So I don't know if that specifically answers your question, but when we're looking at that, we're looking at what are the pieces that are causing these increases. It's inflation. So every year, regardless, we're always looking at a 2 to 3% increase just to match up with inflation. That's the increased costs that we're dealing with for electricity, power, equipment, those types of things. The increase for insurance, personnel costs. That's that inflationary cost. And then the additional aspect is where is the additional money? Is it new staffing? Is it different pieces of equipment that might be needed? The previous slide that Troy had on there documenting kind of what some of those elements were. Those are what goes into those conversations about how we're looking at that staff or looking at that rate increase, again, at that long-term vision as we're developing that capital plan.
Dan, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the list, and I also need to see like a graph of inflation is this much, staffing is this much, projects are this much. I need, for me, more transparency of the background and the work with Public Works to be in these elements for the public to see and for me to see of how much is what, how it equates to that. That's what I'm missing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before? Councilmember Jefferson, hold on.
I have to agree with Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Hold on, Councilmember Jefferson.
Yes, I have to agree with Councilmember Dahlhoff because we want to see it. Show me the graph, show me the data, show me the why. And now I would vote no because I can't see the why. Honestly, so show me those graphs and just why do we need this? All right, so that's what the public needs to understand. Why do we need this? And why should we support this? Times are tight, money is tight. Show me the why.
Councilmember Agabi.
So I guess, but to my left and my right, the comments I hear are well taken. So the 6, 7, and 8 is equal to 21 percentage points together. So is there a planned capital improvement in terms of the water, sewer, and storm in the next 5 years? Because if you are talking about an increase, beside our staff and inflation, there has to be tangible improvement or something that you're pointing to that this is where this rate increase will go to. Do you have any sort of such plan?
We do.
Okay.
I don't have it here tonight. Dan keeps more like a 10-year capital facilities plan.
Okay.
We also have in Fund 303 and 304 the transportation capital facilities plan and the transportation CFP.
For each one of our utilities, we, as Troy mentioned, we operate a 10-year capital plan, or 10-year, basically we have a water system plan, a comprehensive sewer plan, and a comprehensive stormwater plan. These outline the needs both from a labor perspective, a project perspective, a capital perspective, and a programmatic nature of what we need. And we generally look out 10 to 30 years, depending on the utility and you know, what the report is covering. But these were adopted. The last one was adopted in 2021, was our comprehensive water system plan that outlined a fairly significant capital program, as well as various programmatic needs that we have over the next, you know, 10 years that plan will cover. Those translate into our capital, our CFP program. You know, and so yes, these plans exist, these programs exist. Many of them are on our website. I'm happy to share the specific plans with you and go over any particular specific details that you might have for any one of the utilities.
Okay.
Councilmember Dahlhoff.
One more, thank you, Mayor. So that's what I realized. So normally we'd have the budget and each program would have that link to the capital facilities project and would have the explanation of that increase. So that's what's missing. And that's why I feel disconnected. So the next meeting, can we have all these increases, what it's linked to, what percentage inflation, what percentage staffing, and those projects? Because that helps us realize all the elements that are happening and how they're all tied together. And so that's why it's confusing, because normally we would have the expanded programs that would explain that. And that's where I feel like I'm lost. So that's what I would like for the next meeting, is linking those.
Yeah, I think, if I may, Mayor, I think part of the issue is we've got multiple different actions that we are requesting of the council that are related to the budget. Every year, it's my understanding that we do a fee resolution. It's separate and it's related but separate, and that happens annually, and it typically happens on this time frame. Every 2 years, we're adopting the biennial budget. I recognize that it's later than usual. It's still within a statutory time frame, and we have been unable to satisfy the information or the questions that you have about what that budget actually contains. We will be continuing to work on that. This particular resolution is related to the fees themselves. So
Right,
when
the
we
fees equate revenue, which is in the budget.
understood. And so to the degree that we need to wait with this resolution to be adopted until after you feel more comfortable with the budget, that's totally fine.
I would like that. I'm a no right now.
Right. So we are under a statutory timeline for the budget adoption. The fee resolution needs to be also adopted before the end of the year so we can implement them on January 1. But if it would make more sense, then we can absolutely make this fee resolution come after the budget, if that makes more sense. It will make more sense in terms of, you know, what are the things that are being proposed in each of the individual funds. And just to clarify, each of these funds is a separate enterprise or a business fund. It's required to be self-supporting. So everything that we are spending in the water fund is based on either regulatory needs, capital needs, staffing needs, maintenance needs, those types of things. And so we can definitely get into that in more detail at next week's work session.
Perfect.
And hopefully that will make some sense. I would like to ask Troy to continue so that you can have this in mind as you see the different schedules, for example, that you're going to get tomorrow night or tomorrow after tonight's meeting. And then, and so that you can have that as context in terms of when we go into the budget workshop next week as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Swarthout.
One for Dan. So this year we have the 6, 7, and 8 is our proposed increase. Next year, because we do this on an annual basis, next year perhaps it could be lower. Is that what, depending on how the numbers work out as far as what you're trying to achieve here?
Yeah, so again, kind of using that same format that we used to forecast what the rates needed to be, you know, to again ensure that we had enough operational capacity and reserves, you know, in place for each one of the utilities. Next year, as the CFP proposed, there's in water, it would be 5.5%. In storm, I believe that it all comes down for each one of the utilities by 0.5%, with maybe the exception of stormwater, which stays at 8%, given the long-term needs for Deschutes estuary and the urban forestry program. But yes, so we do look at that again, it's, through that long-term view. My intention with the Carollo water rate study is to take the model that we're preparing for that would provide much more, I guess, visual graphic detail around what the forecast looks like, a longer term forecast around rates, is to break that model from just the water utility and also utilize that one in more detail for the sewer and storm utilities as well. Kind of along those same lines, we're kicking off a sewer plan update this month, and by next year we should have a consultant on board to kind of redo that same level of work that we do for the water system plan for the sewer utility, and then in a few years down the road we'll be redoing the storm plan. So all this same information will be kind of revisited, reviewed, on a rotating basis as we do for each of the utilities. But yeah, next year we are proposing a decrease for these three funds.
I do have another question. And I just quickly pulled up the capital facilities plan. So I was looking at the upgrades and the different things that have been proposed. So this is correlational, right? As far as the increases that we're looking at would relate to the capital facilities plan that we have, the updates, because we do have, that's all very specific, and the improvements, the updates that you have, there's different programs here and so again, I'm not sure if I'm asking my question correctly, but it does correlate, right?
It does correlate in some cases, such as the stormwater utility. We had to revisit which some of the projects were, which ones were, might, be a higher priority than others, because again, we had some additional, we have the kind of the adoption, so to speak, of the urban forestry program. That's not considered in the stormwater CFP. So when we look at a rate increase, part of that is what kind of revenues do we need to help support a program like that for the stormwater or for the water resources department only. This is not necessarily, something that we're speaking for is like, backlog for other departments or deferred maintenance in other departments. It's just, how do we maintain and operate a program that water use resources can operate for, like urban forestry? We have the long-term capital need for the Deschutes estuary, as council has recently been discussing that one. So yeah, we kind of revisit these every year. We look at what these, again, what the long-term financial projects or the financial status is of the utility. And again, the primary goal is to make sure that we may retain enough capital in the operation, and we have enough operational reserves, that meets both regulatory and city policies. Which you can see on the bottom line of that capital program for each one of the utilities that we.
I was just looking at the financial plan for the water fund, and then on the very bottom page, it talks about the rate increase, and it shows the percent. So this year, 6%. And so it is forecasted out. So next year could be 5.5. We're looking at 27, could be 5%. So it's on that capital, our financial plan for the water fund. I think that would be, that's a good document to look at as well, as far as, because you've listed, we've got 14 projects, 2 of them are new. And as far as like $81 million worth of projects that we're looking at trying to complete. And so there's just information there that I just appreciate that is available. So.
And I think sort of in carrying on with the discussion of the timeline. So we annually do the fee increase, we biannually do a budget, but then the opposite year of the biennial budget, we're reviewing capital facilities plans and updating and adopting those. And there's a separate capital facilities fund for each of these, the 3 utility funds. There's the transportation CFP and then the general government CFP. So they tend to be spread out and somewhat bifurcated. So I agree, and I understand how difficult it is to understand sometimes how it all works together. But you're absolutely right. Those capital facilities plans have projected out the needs of the capital that have been identified either because of community priorities or regulatory requirements, or the Deschutes estuary is a real recent example of that's a $7.9 million budget item over the course of the next several decades. We have to figure out how we're going to pay for that. So that gets wrapped into all of the planning that we do ahead of time. So.
Councilmember Althauser.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to thank you for that explanation. Lisa, I think that really helped me, because the way that I think this has been a little confusing for me personally, because we're talking about the budget, which is the operating fund or the general fund. And now we're also talking about fees, which are proprietary funds. And those are two very distinct things. And what's sort of helping me visualize that as I think through this is the budget is what we're going to buy in the future. And what we're determining the budget will be is we're determining what those expenditures are. And then as a group, we'll vote on whether we want to adopt those expenditures or not. But with these things, we've already voted to determine what the expenditures are. We voted on the capital facility plan. We know what that's going to be. And so now we've already adopted what that budget effectively is by adopting the capital facility plan. And now we're adopting a financing measure to make sure we actually pay the bills for the commitments we've already established. Is that an accurate understanding of the delineation between these two discussions? Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. You can continue.
Okay. All right, so we're going to back up a little bit and talk about general fund needs. And this is in anticipation of talking about the utility tax. And so when we started this budget, one of the questions asked by Administrator Parks was, what does it take to run your department? Is that, you know, the salaries for the non-reps, more people, more space, whatever that is, let's figure that out and figure out what the needs are. And we talked about in the previous presentation, the needs are much larger than we have revenue. So going to our financial toolbox, one of the ways we can increase revenue, there are a few limited ways. One of those is utility taxes, which is contemplated in this budget. So for some history, the city first instituted a utility tax in 1974, and it was 3%. In 1991, the city increased the utility tax to 6%. And since 1991, there have been no changes. And so it's been more than 30 years since we have increased the utility tax. And so the proposal is to increase that an additional 6% up to 12. This would be only on the Tumwater owned utilities, water, sewer, storm, not Puget Sound Energy or LeMay or any of those others. This would bring additional revenue to the city on an annual basis of $617,000 to help pay for the overwhelming amount of general fund needs, and the cost to the average customer would be $8.08. We'll go to how do we compare to our neighbors? The city of Lacey is still at 6%. The city of Olympia is at 12.5%, and I think they've been there for a few years. And here is the comparison chart. So on the left, you've got the city of Tumwater. That didn't show up very good on the slide. Yes, the left is the city of Tumwater. So the 6% increase for the water fund amounts to $2.30. 7% on sewer is $1.62. The lot 3% is $1.38, and the storm 8% is $1.13. The increase in the utility tax is $8.08, which would increase the average utility bill by $14.51. That's still, and so a total amount for the average bill, $143.55. That still puts us $4.78 lower than Olympia in the middle in the pink, and $7.65 below Lacey on the right. So as I stated earlier, to increase the utility tax, we do have to pass an ordinance. If the council decides to proceed with that, we can bring at a future meeting, we can bring you back an ordinance on consent, on considerations, however you want it. And we've already had a lot of questions. Are there any more?
Any other question? All right.
Do you mind if I provide some? Okay. So there's been lots of questions about why the 6% utility tax. For the enterprise funds or the business funds, so the water, the sewer, the storm, and even the golf, we're only allowed to use funds that are generated by rates and fees in those funds for those utilities. we're allowed to loan ourselves. We're allowed to do interfund loans, for example, from the water fund if there's cash and we need to use it in the general fund, or we need to use it in the transportation fund for some sort of a capital project. We're allowed to do that as a loan from the water fund to the general fund, but we have to pay it back. So all of the rates and charges, so the 6% on water, the 7% on sewer, 8% on storm, all of those rate increases are directly attributable to the work that's getting done within those funds. The 6% utility tax is the one thing related to the water, sewer, and stormwater that can actually be utilized in the general fund. So it's a source of revenue to the general fund that allows us to make up the difference between the projected revenue and the projected expenses. So that is the why the 6.8 million that Troy mentioned in the first presentation includes an assumption that we've been able to collect the $617,000 a year to the general fund, assuming that we have that ability at this point. So the draft budget assumes that we have that additional revenue. And still we're at a $6.8 million deficit.
Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Thank you very much. Lisa, now I'm getting confused. Maybe because it's late. That $617,000 is from the 6, 7, 8%
No.
fee. That's from the taxes.
The $617,000 that's generated by the additional 6% utility tax on the utility rates.
You're using that not for the utilities, but to meet a deficit. in the
We
general
are
fund.
specifically allowed to use the utility tax
Right.
in the general fund as a source of revenue. That's what the city of Olympia uses their 12.5% for. That's what the utility tax is used for. The rates and fees that you pay are used in the utility. The legislature allows you to use the tax as a source of revenue for your general fund.
I get that. I don't like that idea right now, just the temperature of our community. Have we done any community forums, any surveys of what our community thinks about that?
We have not. That's currently what we use our 6% utility tax for. The existing 6% utility tax that we
Right.
currently collect.
I'm not in favor of it going to 12%. That's where I'm at right now because I don't understand the why, because I haven't seen the budget. So I guess if I see the budget, maybe it will become clearer to me what it's being used for. So I'll wait till the next meeting or tomorrow when we get that to see. I need that connection. I need that why, not just because we're going to use it to fill in holes. I need to know where that's going because otherwise I'm a no.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify that the $617,000 that's
From the
projected is helping to balance our budget in the general fund.
Got it. I don't want that on the backs of our constituents to do that. So that's where I'm at right now until I see the budget and better understand.
Yes.
Thank
so
you,
that you're
Thank you.
welcome.
So I guess the next question is, this comes on the next council meeting. Do you want this on consent or do you want this on consideration?
Consideration for me.
Consideration.
Well, so there's two things. So my feeling from the council right now is, well, we wouldn't pass a utility tax tonight anyway. That would have to come back to another meeting with an ordinance. Sounds like that would probably go to considerations. So I guess the question is tonight, or the recommendation for the fee schedule for today is, do we want to pass the fee schedule today or do you want to wait on that?
You want to pass the fee schedule? Yeah. One second, Councilmember Gotti. What was that?
Does the fee schedule include the increase?
The fee schedule includes the increases to the utility rates,
Okay,
but it does not include the utility tax.
okay.
All right, so we want to do the utility rates portion.
I guess so.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? Councilman Rothhauser.
Thanks, Mayor. And to sort of just add another bit to the discussion, like I'm very comfortable passing this tonight just for the fee resolution, particularly because we've already voted on our capital facility plan. We've laid out what that plan is buying, and now we're essentially financing it. So With that, I will sort of modify the recommended action and I move that we adopt resolution R2024-017, updating the 2025 fee schedule as recommended by the Public Works Committee at the October 17th, 2024 meeting, with the exception of the utility tax.
No, I
With
hear,
the
I see.
exception of that?
I-
As I said, as recommended, but without that.
wasn't
It's not,
increased.
it's this.
Oh, but we did recommend increasing, but this is okay?
But it's also in the packet, so it's confusing.
All right, I will restate. I move that we adopt resolution R2024-017, updating the 2025 fee schedule as recommended by the Public Works Committee at their October 17th, 2024
There you
meeting. Okay.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Althauser, seconded by Councilmember Von Holst. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, nay. Great, we got that passed.
We will not give up.